Ladies and gentlemen, hey yo, fellas, welcome into the Week 5 Final Thoughts. And this week is going to be Final Thoughts, as you know, we're talking about it on a Friday. There's still Saturday and Sunday. That one, dude, on Saturday, the live stream is really the closing thoughts because we'll get the injury news 90 minutes before lock. So there's a lot of injury news, a lot of murky statuses out there right now. Some players already ruled out that we can touch on in this video. And as I record this video Thursday afternoon, just the way my schedule is. Of course, we have more content coming out. But the Final Thoughts is based upon what we see right now. And we will touch on the potential for some injury news to shake that up and exactly what you should do. So don't worry, no matter what happens here, you will be well prepared to go to war, to go to battle with everything you need to know in terms of playing GPPs and what the fuck is cash. But if that's your cup of tea, cash as well optimally. So we'll start as always with the quarterback position. And all I ask from you beautiful people out there, how you doing? Brand new shirt. We got about 7 new shirts in the wardrobe. We went shopping yesterday. So, hey, you're going to be seeing some nice stuff. The business write-off, since we only wear these shirts on camera. Maybe going to wear them tomorrow night, though, because, you know, it's Frisky Friday. But I just asked from you to like the video, but also the big one, to join the community by subscribing. It costs nothing for you and helps this channel grow. Let's get into it now by starting at the quarterback position, where, oh my God, this quarterback position is a wasteland. A wasteland, but there's still some interesting names here. But oh, you do not see, no, you do not see any of the solid quarterbacks that we've been getting to roster. The Mahomes that we continue to roster, and Josh Allen, like every fucking week, rostering those two guys as they go back and forth for which week they trade blows. No Russell Wilson, no Matt Stafford, no Lamar Jackson. None of these guys, as they all play on the prime time slates. So we are left with an interesting slate where Aaron Rodgers is the third most expensive player, and Kirk Cousins looks like a very strong option this week, right? So this is where I currently stand for this slate. I am liking a lot, and the guys that I think have the best chance, is the way that I should put it, to be in an optimal stack. Not for cash, an optimal stack here in terms of winning you a GPP. I think there's about 5 guys who separate themselves, really 3 that separate themselves for a mega ceiling, and then the rest, 2 are other guys that we can talk about. So the 3 that really separate themselves are Kyler Murray, Tom Brady, and Dak Prescott. And those are probably the ones that jump off the page for most people right away. We can start with Kyler, who already is going to have a positive pass blocking advantage and run blocking advantage. San Francisco getting pressure on less than 30% of their snaps right now, ranks outside the top 20 in the NFL, and Arizona has the #1 pass rush so far. And if you just see everything that Kyler's doing, not only is he doing it on the legs with about 28 rushing yards per game, I mean, the guy is throwing right now 313 yards per game as well. So he's all there. He's all there right now with a 28 implied team total. And I think there's fantastic ways to stack it up. Now, you're a little bit concerned, though, because, look, there's 5 options now with Max Williams emerging in this passing attack. Like, where do you go here? DeAndre Hopkins is definitely dealing with an injury. Christian Kirk is hit or miss. Only 1 target last week, and then the week before that he goes off for 100 yards. And the most stable piece of this offense in the passing game that you can trust is, believe it or not, AJ Green, 6 targets every single week. So it starts to become tough when you're looking at Kyler to who do you single or double stack him with in San Francisco game. Running back San Fran is easy. Choose whoever you can afford between the Kittles and how you build your lineup, the Kittles, the Debos, and maybe even the Brandon Ayuk. So Kyler does stand out to me. Kyler is probably not my favorite stack just because of the fact that there's a murky status around him, but he definitely jumps into that top 3, top 4. I'm right now debating Tom Brady and Tampa Bay as my favorite overall stack of the week. Again, it is early, but they are just so cheap across the board. Not to mention they have right now the highest team total tied with the Dallas Cowboys on the slate at 29.25. But unlike the Dallas Cowboys, who Dak Prescott has only thrown a total of 25 times on average over the last 3 weeks, Tom Brady, no matter the situation, even in a low-scoring game last week in the rain, is still throwing 40-plus times. And then you factor in everything about this offense. The fact that, yes, Chris Godwin's target share continues to come down, but he's 6,300. Mike Evans is cheap. Antonio Brown, who is arguably the #1 receiver on this team, is $5,200. You have a very cheap tight end in Cameron Brate because he's filling in for Gronk. You have, who I don't really know if I want to stack yet. I probably won't stack Leonard Fournette with Tom Brady, but Leonard Fournette is $5,200. This entire team is so cheap. It's easy to stack them up. It's very easy to trust that they will pass the ball over expectation a decent amount. And then you look at the team total, even as 10.5-point favorites, I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, we continue to see teams score 35 points and the quarterbacks and the stacks going off in those games because, oh yeah, to score 35-plus points, you probably need the passing attack to be clicking. So Brady will have a positive 11% pass blocking advantage in this one. They have the #1 passing game, the #5 overall offense with a top 3 right now pass blocking unit. So Brady obviously looks great, throwing the ball 46 times per game, which massively leads this slate ahead of Derek Carr by about 4 attempts per game. And then next up, I would say that the guy who fills in next, it's kind of a toss-up now between this third stack that stands out and just the quarterbacks. And the reason I'm saying stacks is, if you're talking about cash games, yeah, all these guys are fine for cash. I'm probably going to jump down in a second to Jalen Hurts for cash games. But the reason I'm saying stacks with quarterbacks is I'm stacking every single one of my quarterbacks. It doesn't have to be a double stack in every single one, but a single stack with a run back in at least every single one of my GPP lineups, no matter how big the field size is, unless it's like 10 people, but then that's not really a GPP. But Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott come up next. And Dak Prescott, it is a little bit concerning. He's only throwing 33 times per game right now. The last 3 games since that Thursday night opener, only averaging 25 attempts per game. Now, some of that is just they're really good. Like, the defense has definitely improved for this Dallas Cowboys team. Now, do I think Dak's can only average 25 attempts per game? No, the running game has found some favorable matchups where Zeke has been playing well against Carolina. And the Eagles the last couple of weeks, you've been getting turnovers. You've been getting defensive scores the last couple of weeks with Trevion Diggs pick 6 2 weeks ago. And then this past week, setting up some short fields so Dak just doesn't get more attempts. Like, he's throwing these 35-yard touchdowns. Well, if he would have thrown an extra 6 times, the attempts are going to be 33, and it doesn't look as bad, but the same result happens, right? 35 yards and a touchdown happens on 1 play versus 6 plays. So I do think Dak is firmly still in play, and like Tom Brady, Dak Prescott's weapons are going to be very, very cheap this week. I mean, you're getting a maybe banged up still, definitely with the ribs. CeeDee Lamb might be banged up, but also Amari Cooper with the ribs. So you're getting these guys cheaper. You're getting the tight ends still there, and then Michael Gallup might return. Cedric Wilson keeps scoring these touchdowns on low volume. So that's where I would go. I mean, I think it's very easy to single stack one of CeeDee Lamb or Amari, and then you jump back on the other side with, it depends on what's happening in this Giants game, but this should be a nice divisional matchup. 7-point favorites for Dallas in this one with a 29.25 team implied total. If Sterling Shepard, this is as easy as it seems for the run backs. Evan Ingram looks fine. If Sterling Shepard is in, he's my main run back priority. If he's out, Kadarius Toney, who would fill in for him, is then my main run back priority. So there you go. We don't know the status on Shepard yet. He has not practiced as of Wednesday and Thursday. So if he gets ruled out again, then just go to Kadarius Toney, who's a nice discount at just $4,000. That's kind of how you build those Dallas stacks, and that's how Dak Prescott is looking right now. Dak Prescott also is not really getting there with the mobile upside as much as we saw last year, maybe because of the injury. He's only averaging 13 rushing yards per game right now, but a very strong 7.5% TD percentage and also a 75% completion percentage right now, is only behind Kyler Murray, who is just insanely averaging a 76% completion percentage so far. And the final 2 yeses for me are going to be Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. Now, Aaron Rodgers finds himself in a nice spot, a 27 implied total against Cincinnati this week, whose defense has been better than expected. Rodgers is only throwing the ball 31 times per game, which is probably my main concern here. If they go a lot of too high shells, the Packers have shown that they're fine to just run A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. But the reason I like this game is there's definitely an environment for this to shoot out, with Jair Alexander unlikely to play for the Packers. They did not sign Stephon Gilmore or add him to the roster, so they don't have much there outside of the rookie Eric Stokes and the dusty old Kevin King. He's going to have to be on the field more. So it's very easy to go Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, run it back with whichever one of the wide receivers you want to. T. Higgins is now practicing. I'd probably favor T. Higgins and then Tyler Boyd and then Jamar Chase, especially when you factor in the price point. So that does indeed look good on this slate where there's not that many options. But the one that really stands out in the game environment that looks sneaky to me is this Minnesota-Detroit game. Very quietly, Detroit continues to push teams and continues to score points, especially when trailing. So they're keeping these shootout environments alive. And Kirk Cousins is just $6,500. Cousins, who, yes, this team wants to be run first, but Dalvin Cook is still banged up. He's averaging 39.3 pass attempts per game right now, Kirk Cousins. And you know the stacking options. It is quite simple here. It is Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen's overpriced, but Adam Thielen's there. And then Tyler Conklin or Mr. KJ Osborne. But it's very simple to just go with the throw in the KJ Osborne, or really just go with the Justin Jefferson stack with Kirk Cousins and run it back with whoever you want on Detroit. Is it Khalif Raymond? Is it the ones who stand out the most, like TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift? This game environment does look pretty interesting. And if you want to run that game environment in terms of a shootout, and it's Justin Jefferson having this big 2-touchdown game with Kirk Cousins, the run backs from Detroit do make sense to go to a Swift who would play and see probably 7 targets in that type of an environment, or Hawkinson, who defenses are slowly taking away, but the personnel for Minnesota to do that, not as much there. So that's where I'm at with the main quarterbacks. Yes, guys like Jalen Hurts are in play, more so for cash. If you wanted to do these interesting stacks of maybe 2 Carolina pass catchers with just Jalen Hurts and don't stack Hurts, I think that's an interesting type of correlation, since we know Hurts' rushing upside keeps him kind of independent and sort of that naked QB, but also stacking it up at the same time with the other team. Tannehill, Derek Carr, and Sam Darnold are in play. And I know the one people are going to talk about is Daniel Jones. He's my top quarterback value. Daniel Jones is fine. I think he's okay. He's not a priority for me this week. I prefer the other side of that stack. I just prefer prefer trusting Dak Prescott on run backs more so. This is a good Giants run defense, which can halt and make them throw the ball a little bit more. Daniel Jones is fine if you want to stack him up. My problem with Daniel Jones is that he's coming in right now as basically the second highest owned quarterback, if not tied as the highest owned quarterback. And when Daniel Jones is the chalk, like you saw 2 weeks ago, it's just really easy to get off of that because, yes, he's been playing fine this year, but we still know he has a terrible offensive line. The weapons are inconsistent and shaky. And it's much easier to go to some of these quarterbacks that average 40-plus pass attempts per game as opposed to Jones, who's averaging about 35 pass attempts per game. But very quietly, he has under a 1% interception ratio, which is one of the best ones on the slate. I think it's actually the best not named Kirk Cousins on the slate right now. So that's how I'm attacking quarterback this week. It is an interesting quarterback slate, but I think it'll frustrate a lot of people and make them choose bad players. Like, not that Daniel Jones this year has been bad, but if you're going to own Daniel Jones at 10% and you're only going to own, I know the price points are different, but Tom Brady at 6%, Rodgers at 6%, it's just really easy for me to trust those guys to hit a GPP winning score and trust them for correlation and to not blow up. Is anybody shocked this week if Daniel Jones has 2 or 3 turnovers and this is a blowout for Dallas? No. I would be pretty shocked if the 29-30 implied team total for Tampa Bay did not get there and Tom Brady had 3 turnovers and absolutely hit the ground. I would be shocked if that was the case. Now, before we move into, I've taken a couple props, the running backs. I want to let you know about the props I've taken on Prize Picks. This offer is not going to last long. Use the code SAL. It is SAL. That simple. You get a free $100 to bet with. I have a $200 prop in right here. It's just a 2-teamer or 2-leg prop right now. It's not a parlay, although you can make it a parlay. You have that option. That is why I like Prize Picks. It's going to be Sam Darnold over 250 passing yards. I like Sam Darnold this week a good amount. He's going to be facing Philadelphia, who right now is the 30th overall ranked defense. That's 30 out of 32 teams, meaning they're the third worst defense in the NFL. And Darnold, I like to bounce back here for over 250 yards. I think that this is going to be a solid spot for him. And then Damian Williams over 20.5 receiving yards. We're about to talk about running backs, so this is a little bit of a spoiler alert, but Damian Williams is going to fill in for David Montgomery. I expect the rookie Khalil Herbert to be involved, but I do like Damian Williams a whole lot in this matchup for the price point that you get him at. But then when you're talking about just the over-under receiving yards prop, I have him in the 30s, and he's at 20.5. That number is going to change. Take the overs on both of these. I enjoy them a lot. Again, use the code SAL, S-A-L. It's a link down below. You go to prizepicks.com. You click sign up. You use the code SAL when I ask you for a promo code, and bam, just like that, in 30 seconds, you have a free $100 to use on the weekend. So now let's slide on a late night into the running back position. Now, Dalvin Cook for me is interesting because, so I have ownership projections on Patreon. You can check them out down below. Dalvin Cook is an interesting candidate for me because of the fact that he's not going to pick up much ownership. So Dalvin Cook was limited last week. He was limited in practice on Wednesday. We'll see what happens as the week goes on. But Dalvin Cook, if he indeed does play, there's a chance he's limited again. But there's also a chance that he's not limited in what might be the best matchup EPA-wise, expected points added, versus this Detroit Lions run defense, where it is the dream spot for any running back, especially when your name's Dalvin Cook. You have a high team total, 28, a 4-touchdown team total. You're a 7.5-point favorite. Everything lines up for you. And right now you have Detroit giving up basically top 3 fantasy points to running backs. And oh yeah, those running backs they face are not as good as Dalvin Cook when Cook is actually healthy. I mean, you have a positive 53%, according to the Patreon matchup notes, positive 53% run blocking advantage right now for Dalvin Cook against a team that allows the 5th most yards before contact. And you have Cook, who's obviously one of the most elusive running backs in the league. So this is going to come down to being a GPP play. And now Aaron Jones at 7,900 is also in play for me. I don't really want to stack him up all that much with Rodgers, so it's tough to get to both of them in the same lineups because of that rule, but also because Jones is expensive. He's more of a GPP play because right now I have Jones coming in as a bottom 5 owned running back when we know Aaron Jones, I mean, you saw it on the one primetime slate, 4 touchdowns. He's had 4 touchdowns multiple times in his career. We know that Aaron Jones can pop the roof off of GPPs, and he's going to probably come in less than 5% owned this week because of how stacked the lower 7K and the 6K ranges that we're about to get to. Right now, I really do like Aaron Jones. I mean, in the receiving game, he's been one of the most efficient receiving backs. He already has 15 red zone touches, which is right now only 3rd. It's 3rd on this list behind Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry. So there are ways for Aaron Jones to smash this slate. The price point is going to make it so people don't go there and they jump down instead to guys who do look very good, right? You do have your Saquon Barkley, who is now starting to see the light. He is now number 2 over the last 2 weeks in routes run, in targets for running backs with 13. He's heavily involved in this offense. He's going to be an underdog in this one, which just means probably some more routes for Saquon Barkley, who, if you look at his seasonal stats, they're going to be skewed. 17.8 opportunities per game. These last couple of weeks, you're seeing 20-plus opportunities, the workhorse back you like to see. And now he has a positive 36% run blocking advantage against this Dallas run defense right now that ranks 25th and 26th in tackling. So it's very quietly a great spot for Saquon, but expect ownership. I have him around 14% projected owned right now. Zeke's on here. I've continued to smash Zeke like every single time he's on any slate outside of the opening slate against Tampa Bay, and it's worked out because Zeke right now is the RB4 depending on your fantasy scoring formats. Zeke right now is going to be a 7-point favorite with a 30 implied total, just like Dalvin Cook. Like, this is just the reason why Zeke will be, I have him at 12%. Cook's like 5% owned right now. Zeke is basically the $1,400 $10 discount off of Cook. They have a very similar implied total. Zeke actually a higher team total. They have a very similar, both being 7-point favorites. And Zeke's volume right now is just absolutely nuts. Zeke is averaging 18 total opportunities per game. And that's without seeing any passing work last week, just seeing one target because he was getting everything done on the ground. He already has 10 red zone opportunities on the season, and I'll have a positive 68% run blocking advantage against the Giants that ranked giving up the 6th most yards before contact. Now, Najee Harris is on here. Najee Harris is sort of the one that I'm not actively getting away from, but because of how secure his opportunities are, Mr. Rookie Najee Harris, it is very nice, the projection every single week. Like when you know a guy is going to see, he leads the NFL as a rookie right now in targets and routes run at the running back position, it's going to be very interesting and nice when you see his projection. Now, he's my second highest projected owned running back, meaning that the field is going to be on him yet again. And it's because he's getting so much volume that at this $6,900 price tag and $7K price tags, it's not really letting you down as much, but the offense is bad. He's only rushed for over 45 yards once. The receptions and the yardage is keeping him in play. If the ownership is going to be there for a guy that if there's just a week where he does not catch 5 or 6 balls, he might crater for you. And even then, 5 catches for 30 yards and 50 yards on the ground is not getting you there. He has this very secure role, but if the ownership is there, I can just pivot to a Zeke who's going to be 10%, 5% less owned. I can pivot to a Saquon who will be 5 to 10% less owned, or go down a little bit more to guys who will definitely be less owned. I mean, Aaron Jones is $1,000 more than Najee Harris, and Aaron Jones is probably going to be a 4th to a 5th of the ownership as him, right? So it's more so a leverage play in GBPs here as to why I don't want to get to as much Najee Harris. Again, he looks good. There's no reasons why you should absolutely be saying Najee Harris is a terrible play in cash type formats. It's just more so the fact that his 8.5 targets per game is beautiful. His 22.3 opportunities per game is right there with some of the tops in the league, right? He's basically top 3 in that number. It's just the ownership that does worry me a little bit. Now, Joe Mixon, we'll see based on when you're watching this, he might already be ruled out. And then $4,000 Samaje Perine does become in play, but I'm not that excited. I think Chris Evans will factor in some. For your cash type formats, $4,000 running back obviously looks good. GPP sure as well, but it'll depend on ownership. But Mixon looks great. I probably want to run back the receivers in those Green Bay stacks, so he would be in lineups where it's not this Green Bay stack, maybe a skinny stack with like a Devontae Adams and Joe Mixon makes sense because he's just so cheap and he continues to see a load of opportunities. 23 opportunities per game, ranks 2nd on the slate, only behind right now Derrick Henry. The problem is their offense doesn't get in the red zone much. Mixon only 5 red zone touches, even though he's seeing all that opportunity right now, and he's not seeing as much receiving work, but he's dirt cheap for the price tag. DeAndre Swift would be the great running back choice you want to see in your run backs for Minnesota. Swift already seeing the 2nd highest targets per game, only right now behind Najee Harris on the slate with 7.3 per game. He has 10 red zone touches as well, so that's good to see. Double-digit red zone touches is something that only a handful of running backs through the first 4 games have had on this slate. So yes, Swift continues after having a stinker last week to look good. Now I'll scroll up because we start to get to some of the better value running backs on the slate. James Robinson, Damian Williams, and Leonard Fournette are probably my 3 favorite value running backs. They were the 3 running backs that popped up in the values video for this week. Be sure to check that out, going through the top values at each position. And they remain, as of right now, the case. I had the Damian Williams over rushing yard or over receiving yards. His over rushing yards also looks good. Now he's an underdog with only a 20 implied team total, so that's why, like in cash formats, it could be a little bit risky, but we know he has the receiving game work, and I expect him to be heavily involved over the rookie Khalil Herbert this week. And then you start to get to these guys that I'm just so interested as to why it's $6,000 James Robinson. Even if Carlos Hyde was to return, you're getting James Robinson seeing 16.5 opportunities per game, red zone opportunities as well in this offense that is now slowly starting to figure things out and move the ball. He's efficient on his yards per touch with 0.819 yards per touch, which is basically top 10 on this slate, borderline top 5 for running backs. Everything looks good for Robinson. He's my number 1 projected value play right now. I have him for over 17 points at $6,000. The number 2 projected value play is Leonard Fournette. And Leonard Fournette, I'm not really interested in stacking him up all that much with Brady stacks, but my God, Fournette looks great. 130 total yards last week, only 3 carries basically for Ronald Jones, 16 opportunities now for Fournette, and 7 red zone touches as he slowly morphs into this role. Giovanni Bernard might return this week, which hurts him in the 2-minute drills would be my guess, is where Bernard takes over, or if they're trailing, which I'm not expecting, but in 2-minute drills, so that does hurt Fournette's possibility of getting maybe 1 or 2 more targets, which is something, but at this price point, it doesn't really matter. And we haven't even seen Fournette this year have a touchdown. His touchdown percentage is not high, and he's still projecting out for almost 17 fantasy points for me at $5,200. Now, because of that, I expect some ownership to be in play, but not 15 to 18% as of right now, like 10% ownership, which is not bad. A bunch of other running backs are in play. Obviously, and actually it's not that much. Obviously, Derrick Henry's in play. He's $9,000. He's going to grade out as an insane play. I have him projected as the highest owned player on the entire slate at 24% projected ownership. He's going to be chalky. He looks good. He's expensive, but we have enough value this week. There's no concerns with Derrick Henry. The only reason why he's not a yes is the fact that he's going to be like 25% owned this week. So not getting to him gives you massive leverage against the field. And one way to get off of that would maybe go to some Tannehill stacks. Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler, Chase Edmonds, Damian Harris, all here. I'm probably not going to get to Harris. I know he's a 10-point favorite. I know he should see a lot more volume and not finish this game by any means with negative rushing yards like last week in that matchup. But $5,500 for a guy who's going to carry the rock 16 times, probably see one target, and you're hoping for the 100+ yards and 1 to 2 touchdowns for it to really smash. It just seems easier to not have that happen and not play him, even at low ownership. Let me know before we get into the wide receivers at this point, who is your favorite running back play on the entire slate? Doesn't matter about price, doesn't matter about value. Your favorite play that you are putting in there, you're locking him in, and you're rolling with it. Let me know in the comment section. Let's have a conversation around that, and let's slide into right now on a late night, the wide receiver position. So I think right now I have 40 wide receivers in a player pool, which might sound like a lot. It's not if you're playing 150s, but the guys that are yeses is about half of that. So Devontae Adams, yeah, Devontae Adams is on a slate this week where you don't have Tyreek Hill, you don't have Stephon Diggs, you don't have Cooper Kupp, you don't have any of these studs, right? Like you have a banged up continuously at this point, DeAndre Hopkins. So it's Devontae Adams, $500 more than anybody else, $800 cheaper than Derrick Henry. I'll take Devontae Adams there, who I have actually projected out for more fantasy points. So that's another reason why Derrick Henry, again, great play this week, but there are some other ways to go about it. And Devontae Adams will probably be, I don't know, 15% owned to Derrick Henry's 25% ownership. So I'll take Adams in matchups against guys like Eli Apple this week, where it's going to be one of the best advantages on the entire week for Adams, 11.3 targets per game. It looks good even if you're not stacking it up just to get Adams as a one-off. Justin Jefferson's here. This is the main priority, right? You're going Justin Jefferson in your stacks with Kirk Cousins. It looks fantastic with the 28 implied team total. Justin Jefferson's probably going to find himself in a matchup against Amani, the former, I believe, Penn Stater, if I do recall. 9 targets per game and a top 10 matchup on the entire week for Jefferson looks good. DJ Moore continues to be in play, but I just much prefer Justin Jefferson and Adams. I know Moore is getting all the volume. I know Moore looks really good, but I'm not as excited about stacking that game up completely. Now, there's ways to go about this game in skinny stacks. You can go DJ Moore and a Devonta Smith. You can go DJ Moore and even just a Jalen Hurts and skinny stack it that way, which is an interesting way to go about it. Moore is seeing 10.8 targets per game. He's averaging basically 100 yards per game, and 38.7% of his team's air yards is right around what Adams gets for the Packers. So Moore is in play, but I do prefer Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams above him. Then you hit this sweet spot where I have Deebo Samuel on here as a yes, but Deebo's probably only getting into my lineups as a run back option in any of my Kyler Murray stacks if I can afford it, because Kyler himself is expensive, and if you go to Hopkins, he's expensive. Because Deebo, his team right now, they're throwing basically bottom 5 in the league. They're throwing bottom 5 in the league. He's surviving off of these two massive touchdowns where he was wide open on the plays. Deebo is the ultimate sell high candidate in season-long leagues. I'm not expecting Deebo Samuel's wild 25.2 wide receiver high outside of Cooper Kupp, but on this slate, highest wide receiver points per game to continue when he's on an offense that is not going to throw the ball, right? They're not going to throw the ball. They might get Eli Mitchell back. Jeff Wilson's coming back. He's not going to continue to survive on these 40% target shares when they're only throwing 20 times because he's hitting an 80-yard touchdown. It's not going to happen. It's a small sample where two of his plays this year are accounting for 50% of his fantasy points. Insane. So Deebo's a yes, but mainly just in those runbacks, because I'd prefer guys, even though Mike Evans is expensive for the workload and the target share that he's getting, I'll prefer guys that I can stack up like a Mike Evans who has 2 touchdown upsides in a game where his team total is 30 implied points compared to Deebo as an underdog with only a 22 implied team total. So Deebo is a yes on here, mainly as a run back if you're playing Kyler Murray. That's basically where I'm going with that one, because Mike Evans' 9.3 targets per game have come up, a 30% target share of his team's air yards, and averaging 12.8 yards per attempt, which leads any of these wide receivers above $6,000, meaning that there's upside, and obviously, the touchdowns are there. Keenan Allen is basically like a one-off. I'm not too invested in any Herbert stacks. Chris Godwin is an interesting name here because he started the season off hot, and then he kind of slowed down. Now only 7.5 targets per game. He only saw a 10% target share last game. His target share has dropped every single week, but it is a small sample. But Antonio Brown is back. Giovanni Bernard might come back. Fournette is involved in the offense. So the passing attack is spreading out, and Godwin's been this odd man out. I like the matchup in the middle of the field. Probably get some Justin Coleman this week. Here's the big thing. Do we think that if he has another stinker this week, do we think we ever see a buy low spot on Chris Godwin below this price tag? Do we think he ever hits 5,800 and then he's a smash? Maybe, but I'm going to buy low at $6,300. You get the Cowboys receivers on here. I think you probably see Amari Cooper, see a lot of James Bradbury. Bradbury's been solid, but 2 years ago was his prime. He's still solid, but I'll still take Amari Cooper in that matchup. I prefer Amari Cooper to CeeDee Lamb. You get the $100 discount, but I'll just take Amari Cooper on that one. Their target share at this point is pretty similar. You're getting CeeDee Lamb so far in the season, who has been struggling. A nice trade for target, though, because I expect more Dak pass attempts. You have CeeDee Lamb averaging 8 targets and Amari Cooper 7.3. Very similar volume. CeeDee Lamb, though, a lot more air yards, so a lot more upside downfield. Let's actually switch that. I'll take the CeeDee Lamb. Now, CeeDee Lamb's overall catch percentage is not there, just 62% compared to Amari's at 79%. Similar yards per game. It's a coin flip. I'll take CeeDee Lamb because I expect him to be a little bit lower owned based on what I'm seeing early on right now. You get Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is a yes, mainly because of a run back option. Again, I prefer T. Higgins. I prefer Tyler Boyd. So Jamar Chase should maybe be a maybe, mainly as those run backs in the Packers stacks. Because if I get like 10% Packers stacks, I'll probably just end up naturally getting a decent amount of Jamar Chase, but probably more of his teammates. Jacoby Myers is a guy that I love. You should trade for him in your leagues. Jacoby Myers continues to see high volume. I have him for 16 fantasy points in somewhat low ownership again this week. The guy is averaging 10.3 targets per game. He is right now top 8 in overall targets and target share. He doesn't have a lot of air yards because, like you saw in that Sunday night game, if you watched it against Tom Brady in Tampa Bay, he's being targeted like 5 yards down the field. But that was also a rain game. So Jacoby Myers looks solid. I like the fantasy points. Courtland Sutton is basically right now, he's top 5 in the NFL in air yards, and he's all the way up there in unrealized air yards. I don't even care if it's Drew Lock. Drew Lock is going to be playing YOLO ball more often, so you get targets downfield. But Sutton is averaging 17.3 air yards per target and 41% of the team's air yards. That's some of the highest numbers on the slate, meaning that he's getting the targets downfield. Can he convert? Last week, he should have had a deep touchdown. He was just overthrown by Drew Lock. If you played him last week like I did in a lot of high-stakes stuff, Courtland Sutton should have finished that game with like a 50-yard touchdown. Damn you, Drew Lock. If your family's watching this, I'm sorry, but come on. Could you just have, it would have let the Dollarooskies flow a little bit more than they did. And then you start to get to some of these guys in stacks, like Sterling Shepard will be the run back option. If Sterling Shepard does not play, just change that name with Kadarius Toney, who's going to be $1,300 cheaper. He's my primary run back in Dallas stacks will be either Shepard. If he's out, then it's going to be Kadarius Toney, the rookie. Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, the guys that I talked about in run backs. T. Higgins is actually the target leader per game on this team when he actually plays, and the red zone target leader. He's missed about a game and a half now. Missed that last game, and he missed half of the first game leaving, and that game went to overtime, so like really 7 quarters so far of this team's action. Shenault, if you think he takes on 2 wide receiver sets, is fine. He projects out nicely. And then the 2 really good values. 2 of my favorite value plays this week. They were in the video. Antonio Brown at $5,200 just unlocks a lot of stuff for you. Antonio Brown at $5,200 right now is just in the ultimate way for a guy averaging 7 targets per game, 14.6 air yards per target right now. He is a great way to go up to a $7,400 Tom Brady, add Antonio Brown. If you want to double stack it, you can get to Chris Godwin. That's just such an easy and cheap stack to attack for a team you know is going to have 40+ attempts in this game. They're just going to throw the ball a shit ton. Even if the game is out of hand, they're going to throw the ball a shit ton. And Antonio Brown might be the wide receiver 1 on the team, and he's just so damn cheap. I have him right now as a top value play. The number 1 overall value play on the entire slate, not just wide receiver, but in any position, is Curtis Samuel, who we've already talked about. You probably already know to play him. He's very close to a lock button for me. Played 37% of the snaps last week, saw 4 targets on a 31% target rate on just 13 routes. I would expect him to play 60 to 70% of the snaps this week now that he has another week off. He apparently has been healthy for 2 weeks. They just wanted to ease him back in. So if you get 70% of the snaps out of Curtis Samuel, yeah, there's a lot of upside for a 7 to 8 to 9 target game there and a 5 to 7 reception game, especially if it's low ADOT targets like you saw the 4 targets last week. So that's the guys that stand out. A bunch of maybes are on here as well, depending on your stacks, like a DeAndre Hopkins and AJ Brown if he plays. Devonta Smith, quietly another 100-yard game last week. Marvin Jones is on here at 57. There's a lot of guys on here who are just lower owned that are just kind of fillers if you need them. Waddle's one of the names that stands out the most because of the Tampa Bay stacks. Like we've talked about stacking Tampa Bay, who do you run it back with? Well, Devonta Parker, who had a nice game last week, made 3 great catches. Devontae Parker. You have Jalen Waddle, and you have Mike Gesicki. I would probably rank it if I wanted to get run back options in this game. I'd probably rank it Parker, Waddle, Mike Gesicki in that order. I just think Parker has more red zone upside and downfield upside, whereas Waddle is basically being used as like an extended wide receiver right now. So a lot of other names on here are basically for those stacks, like Allen Lazard in stacks, KJ Osborne in stacks if you want to get there. Same thing with Randall Cobb. So that's wide receiver. It's loaded. It's probably primarily focusing on where are you going with your stack, who are you running it back with if it's a wide receiver like it will be most of the time, and then how much money do you have left? Can you afford a Devontae Adams if he's not already in your stack? How much money do you have left? Do you need a cheap guy? Is Curtis Samuel just lock buttoned into every single lineup, so now you know exactly how much money you have in addition since he's so cheap? That's kind of the way you have to approach your slate, and then you'll figure out who the wide receivers are that you can fill in. And as we close up shop here with that tight end position, the tightest of ends, before we get into it, SuperDraft, I just want to let you know really quickly, there's $50,000 to first. Well, this is the $5,000 to first contest, but they have a $50,000 to first contest, as you can see right here, and then they have a $10,000 to first contest, and basically SuperDraft is a multiplier format. I am like the biggest promoter of SuperDraft. Compared to DraftKings and FanDuel spending billions of dollars on their marketing budget, SuperDraft pays me, and it's not billions of dollars, it's not millions of dollars, I can tell you right that much, right? Here's the big thing, though. This contest is going to fill at 70%. 70% meaning if you enter a lineup, you beat 30% of the field. Your best chance to win any DFS tournament or cash in any DFS tournament is the tournament where you have to beat 30% less people for the same amount of money as you would on DraftKings. So put your first dollars into this $50,000 first contest. Right now, it's not even filling anywhere near. By the time lock comes, we can check on this on Sunday. It won't fill anywhere near. They have massive contests every single week. The only reason you're not playing on there, outside of it not being legal in your state right now, because DraftKings and FanDuel's marketing budgets have just forced you to go to their sites. They're great sites. They have great prizes. They have great contests. No contests are going to be better than one where the field does not fill by 30%. If you want $20 to try this out for free, you can get into this contest that is only $20 to enter. $20 to try it out for free. You can use the code SAL, S-A-L. You will not have a better chance. You will not have a better chance when you have to beat 30 to 25 to 35% less of the field for the same amount of work, the same amount of money. You have to beat less of the field. Use the code SAL for a free $20 over there. So now let's slide into the tight end position. Tight end position is straightforward. There's a lot of scrubs this week. You should probably play the scrubs unless you're stacking up Arizona. Go to George Kittle. Unless you somehow have found a lot of money because you're paying all the way down for Samaje Perine if he opens up, or Leonard Fournette, and you have so much money left over, then go to Waller. Waller's my highest projected. It's as simple as that. Everything looks great for Waller if you can indeed afford it. I probably won't be able to afford it all that much, but if you're not going to go to Waller, then go to George Kittle. Mainly going to George Kittle and run backs of my Arizona stacks. And if you're not going to go to George Kittle, well, now it's just time to start punting the position with $3,000 or $2,000 players. I mean, I don't know how Jared Cook is $3,600 for a guy seeing 6 targets per game, for a guy seeing over 16% of his team's air yards, getting red zone targets. He should have another touchdown called back against Dallas for that illegal shift that continues to get called on them. And if you're not going to Jared Cook because you don't want to go there, I prefer Jared Cook over Cameron Brate. But Cameron Brate, yet again, another cheap way to get ownership towards this game for Tampa Bay. Cameron Brate did not do much last week, but he did end up seeing a couple of targets. We know that he has talent. He's used in the red zone. There is 2 touchdown upside for Cameron Brate at just $3,300. Is a cheap way to get more exposure to your Tampa Bay stacks. He does grade out as one of my better value tight ends. And then the final tight end that's going to look fantastic is a man who last week with Logan Thomas put on IR and injured, he ran 31 routes last week. Ricky Seals-Jones, the former Chief, the former Arizona Cardinal, and now he gets a matchup against New Orleans, which is not a great matchup, not a great team total, not a great player in general, but he saw 4 targets last week on short notice, and he ran 31 routes. If he's going to go out there and run 30-plus routes and actually be involved and be a big body in the red zone for Washington, and Taylor Heineke, who's probably going to throw the ball 40 times in this game, then yes, Ricky Seals-Jones at the flat minimum. This is the big thing. The flat minimum looks good. There is an outcome where Ricky Seals-Jones scores you 0 points and you can still win tournaments, right? Because he's so cheap. Because the fact that you go down an extra $1,000 from Jared Cook to Ricky Seals-Jones gets you up to a Devontae Adams instead of like the 7K range at wide receivers, and Devontae Adams hits his 40-point ceiling game, right? That's the outcome that can happen. People have won the Millie Maker with zeros in the tight end spot. Now, I'm not hoping and telling Ricky Seals-Jones to get a 0 for us, but what I'm trying to tell you is that there's really not much risk here. If you play Ricky Seals-Jones and he goose eggs for you at $2,500, so what? The reason why you're playing him is because he's so dirt cheap, and you know that he's running routes, so there's a chance he can have 4 catches for 40 yards or even fall into the end zone, but you know that he's running routes, so there's at least a reason to play him. But so what at $2,500? Because he allows you to pay up. He allows you to save $3,000 off of George Kittle, which gets you another elite running back, which maybe gets you Kyler Murray or maybe gets you a Devontae Adams. So if you can't tell already, I am a big advocate for punting tight end when it's this obvious. Like last week, Will Dissly was not $2,500. He was $2,600. It was close. But Will Dissly, we already know what this offense is for Seattle. They like to run the ball and they like to throw to 2 guys. Like Gerald Everett wasn't getting an insane target share. He had the 1 5-catch game, but outside of that, not getting an insane target share. We know that Washington is going to play from behind. We know that they're going to chuck the ball a lot. We know the tight end is involved in the middle of the field, and we saw that last week with Ricky Seals-Jones playing the same role as Logan Thomas. So that is where I go with tight end. And then there's a bunch of maybes depending on where you're stacking it. The rest of the fucking slate is basically, look, every other tight end is basically a maybe on this slate. I think that Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, and Goddard, and Gesicki, and Conklin, and all these guys are fine. Max Williams, Robert Tonyan, Dalton Schultz, they're all fine. They're all fine. Dan Arnold looks pretty interesting as well, $2,900 if you didn't want to punt all the way down. Right? Anthony Fersker, Evan Ingram, they all look completely fine. It's just that they're all the same fucking thing. They all project out for like 7 to 8 fantasy points, and if they're going to be in a stack, give them a little bit of a bonus. Outside of that, though, they're all going to get maybe 1 red zone target. Maybe you're hoping they catch 3 balls for like 40, 50 yards, and you're hoping they find the end zone. That's basically how it goes. So I might as well punt the guy who's $2,500. Like I have right now, Ricky Seals-Jones projecting out for the same amount of points as all those other guys I just mentioned. Max Williams, Zach Ertz, I have for less points. I have him for very similar points to Evan Ingram and Anthony Fersker and all these guys, right? More points than Dan Arnold and more points than Kyler Conklin. So I'm just going to punt the position probably. The cat's out of the bag. There's just 2 punts this week. You can punt Curtis Samuel and punt fucking Ricky Seals-Jones. You have all the money in the world to spend. But thank you for tuning into this here video. You spent your time with me, your half hour with me today. I really do appreciate that. Before you go, if you could can hit the subscribe button, and that really does help. And come join the community over on Patreon. We have a Discord. We have a lineup optimizer now, projections, rankings, ownership, matchup notes, showdown information, a bunch of stuff. Closing Thoughts podcast on Sunday morning. Exactly where I'm going in GPPs, all of my exposures, all of the stacks I'm going to, how you can build your optimizers and all your lineups out to actually take down the slate. So come join the community over on Patreon. Support the sponsors of the show that keep these lights on and these shirts on me that look actually pretty nice, so I don't got to go topless on here. And the whiteness of my body, just absolutely olive face, Italian olive face, living in Texas, a little tan, but the whiteness of my body, the light reflects off of it, you would all go blind. So thank you to the sponsors of the shows for allowing me to wear shirts and have lights and have thick ass pumpkins like that one. I'll see you on the next one. We got more content dropping this weekend. Sunday Night Football, that one dude, Sunday live stream. Already a bunch of content out on the week with the values, the first looks, the showdown slates. We're gonna smack you all around. We already have here today. Thank you for tuning in today, and I'll see you all in the next. Beautiful people, I'm running out of my breath. I need to drink some coffee. It's early in the morning, but hey, afternoon. But hey, see you in the next one.